Welcome back to The Joy of Vinyl. I'm Rick Coste. Now get this, I was recently listening to Black Sabbath's Mob Rules record, and a memory struck. It wasn't just really one memory, but it was a series of memories from back when I was a teenager. I was probably listening to that exact album, which I've owned for 42 years. Well, anyways, the memory involves my dad. He had a little study in the basement where we lived, and that's where he would go to escape. He'd go there to pay bills, to read, to relax. And the stereo system we had as a family was against the wall that separated the family room from my dad's study. When the music was too loud, my dad would pound on the wall, and I'm surprised he didn't make the needle jump. It was a constant mental struggle between wanting to edge the volume up a bit and not wanting to hear him thump on the wall. So the funny thing is, there were times when I would turn down the music, I'd flip the record over, and the music would suddenly blare out of the speakers louder than it had been, louder than intended, bringing back the thumping on the wall. But how did it suddenly get louder? I hadn't touched the volume. I used to swear that the music on the second side was louder than the first side. Crazy, right? Well, come to find out, I was onto something. It wasn't so much about things being louder in side two, it was physics. Let's talk for a second about a record's groove. The length can vary depending on the size of the record and the speed, but on average, a standard 12-inch record's groove is usually around 1,500 feet long, a bit more than a quarter of a mile. A 7-inch 45 is a third of that, around, say, 500 feet on average. The width of the groove also depends on several factors, but it's typically 0.001 to 0.0015 inches wide for a stereo record. Mono's a bit different, and it's a bit wider, anywhere between 0.002 to 0.003 inches. Now, there's a lot of detail packed into that tiny space, detail that the stylus picks up as it vibrates along. Now, back to the main topic. For that, I need to turn to the world of racing. Okay, so what does that have anything to do with my dad pounding on the wall for me to turn my music down? Well, it speaks to what I was saying about the second side of an album sounding, louder all of a sudden out of nowhere. Listening to a vinyl record is like driving a car around a circular track. When you're on the outer edge, you've got more space to speed up and enjoy the ride at full throttle. But as you make your way into the tighter inner lanes, you have to slow down, and the experience becomes I would say, a bit more subdued. Now think of that racetrack like a vinyl record. Now, like the car, as the stylus tracks its way towards the center of the record, it slows down. Now this is called linear velocity, which decreases as the stylus moves near or towards the center. Now this can affect the audio quality and make it sound quieter. Another thing to take into account is inner groove distortion. Now this is due to the grooves being packed closer together near the center. There's less space, and that reduction in space, it minimizes the detailed information that was present at the outer edge of the record. Now all of this results in a less dynamic range and volume near the center. The stylus has more room to capture dynamic sounds in the outer groove, but all that gets limited as it moves towards the crowded center, resulting in quieter audio. So that explains this. The music was quieter before I flipped the record over in some cases. When I did, it was suddenly louder. Now, listening to compact discs or streaming music from your favorite app, that doesn't suffer the same loss of dynamic range that vinyl records do. Now, this poses a problem for audio engineers when it comes to mastering a vinyl record. There's some tricks that a conscientious engineer can pull out of their hat to deal with all of this. One technique is called dynamic range compression. I think I've talked about it before. But what this does is essentially it reduces the difference between the loudest and the quietest parts of the music. By compressing the dynamic range, engineers can make those the quieter parts sound a bit louder, so the volume seems more consistent across the entire side of the record. Now, another approach is to give consideration to the sequencing of the songs on each side of the tracks. As an engineer, you could place the more dynamic, complex sounds towards the outer edge, where there's more room for groove modulation. You could then take the simpler, say the quieter sounds, maybe the songs, maybe the acoustic songs, and place them closer to the center of the record. So this can help minimize the impact of the inner groove distortion and make the listening experience, for lack of a better term, more even. So is any of that done for this record? Well, there aren't any quiet songs here. Side one ends with the title track, which is a heavy Sabbath song if there ever was one. I'm sure Martin Birch, the engineer of this record, did everything he could for a consistent sound without allowing it to affect the quality. He might have even allowed for a bit more, maybe compression to close out side one, given the inherent loudness of that track, Mob Rules. It's hard to fight against physics, but human ingenuity can accomplish some pretty amazing things. Well, maybe not that. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Drop a comment here or get in touch with me at joyofvinyl.com. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe to the show. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, please take care of yourself and enjoy your records.